My name is Chrissy Hodges, and I am a peer support specialist. I am an OCD referral and resource consultant and the author of Pure OCD, The Invisible Side of Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. And I'm here today. I'm going to talk about self-esteem, the collapse of self-esteem when it comes to mental illness. And in particular, yes, Rudy, I am laughing at you. Shout out to Rudy. In particular, I can really only speak for having OCD and depression, but I will say that the grieving process of dealing with mental illness, not just the symptoms, but the stigma and everything that comes after it, I think is really, really relevant. So this topic has come to my attention. It's always been to my attention because it's something I struggle with and still struggle with when it comes to self-esteem hugely. But in the last couple weeks, Sean Chinook and I had a great conversation about this and the impact that it has, especially living with OCD, the pure OCD, the sexual, violent, blasphemous, intrusive thoughts, just the havoc it wreaks on your self-esteem. And I want to get into that here a little bit. So shout out to Sean Chinook. It's a huge inspiration to me and for this topic today. And I know that people struggle with this because a lot of my clients that I work with in peer support talk about this often. So first, I just wanted to talk about what I mean when I say that self-esteem takes a hit. I can only speak for myself, but I actually was just recording, oh yay, and if you don't know about it, my new podcast, Coffee with Chrissy at buzzsprout.com. Yeah. It's 5 minutes every morning, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, of just mental health messages of hope to help you in the morning get a little bit motivated and know you're not alone. I was just talking about this and on my podcast when I was recording it. The funny thing is that before I was diagnosed and that I knew that I had a mental illness, I suffered for 12 years in silence with horrible sexual intrusive thoughts, debilitating depression. Nobody even knew. I hid it from the world. You know, hiding anything is horrible anyway. But then once I was diagnosed and found out that I had OCD and mental illness in general, all the good things about myself that I thought were there went flying out the window. And this belief entered my mind that all the good things that my family and friends thought about me before were all of a sudden gone. And I hear my clients saying this too, particularly ones that have had experiences in an inpatient hospital or suicide attempts or have been suicidal. And they say, I used to be the rock. I used to be someone people could trust and lean on, and now I'm not anymore. And I understand that so much. And there's nothing that my family or friends did for me to believe that. It just was this weird thought that came into my mind after being diagnosed with a mental illness and realizing like I had been betrayed by my brain. You know, my brain had been hijacked. And all of a sudden, everything about me was lost. Everything that I thought was good was gone. And it took me a long time to get it back. Many, many, many years, in fact. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. So I had intrusive, unwanted thoughts of a sexual nature. If you don't know what those are, they're not fun. They're not exciting. It's like picturing your parents naked and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, why? You know, most people are like, that was a gross thought. And then when someone with OCD has it, they're like, why did I just think that? Does that mean that I'm attracted to my parents? So just want you to know it's not fun. But when you get these thoughts at a young age, which I started getting thoughts at age 8, you know, just disturbing, unwanted thoughts, my brain is turning on itself over and over and over from 8 years old up until 20 when I was diagnosed. These crucial times of development of my brain And the whole time I'm sitting here telling myself, I must be this horrible person for having these thoughts. I must be this horrible person to even think these things. What kind of person thinks this? Does this really say something about me? This must mean that I'm a monster or whatever. And you are telling yourself over and over and over every single day, combating these thoughts, that you're a bad person. You must be a bad person. No one would have these thoughts if they weren't a bad, horrible monster of a person. This is in the development of your brain, your self-esteem, your confidence, everything. And so you can't just swoop that away with a diagnosis. Oh, I have OCD. Oh, okay, so those thoughts mean nothing. What? That's not the truth. You have been telling yourself this and surviving this illness for years and years and years, and all of a sudden you're supposed to be like, meh, it was just OCD. It doesn't work that way. For years and years, we struggle after, even with effective treatment. We struggle with, why didn't I know that these were intrusive thoughts and this was OCD and this wasn't me? How am I even capable of having these thoughts? How am I going to tell people that I had these thoughts? What are people going to think if they know I was capable of these thoughts? And then a lot of times this is what we think too. I just want to get to recovery and forget this all happened. I want to go back to the person I was before. You've probably heard me say that before because this is a big one. Most people will think, I just want to get this, I want to get treatment, I want to get in recovery so I can go back to who I was before. I even thought that. What am I going to do? Go back to when I was 8? I mean, really? I want to be the person I was before I was 8 years old. I didn't know anything. I didn't know a damn thing about life or anything. I was just surviving. And the sad reality, I'm just going to say it, is that you won't. You won't go back. And that hits hard. Because OCD, the type of OCD that we nickname pure OCD, sexual, violent, blasphemous, intrusive thoughts, it hijacks your brain and it changes you. The content, the themes of the OCD are traumatic, and trauma changes your brain. The daily fight every day to try to convince yourself that you aren't this awful person, and that because you know that you're not, because of that insight, and I'll get to that in just a second. You know that you're not, but you can't stop thinking about it. And so the daily re-traumatization of having to fight to prove to your own brain that you aren't a horrible person. How can you believe when all is said and done with, oh, check, you have OCD, all of a sudden that's gone, and oh, let's return to this wholesome person I thought I was? No, that person is gone. And I don't mean the wholesome person. I mean the person that you were before all this hit. Because trauma changes you. Trauma changes your self-esteem. It changes the way you look at the world. And at first, that seems terrifying and daunting. It seems like all I want is to go back to what made sense, because this didn't make sense and this scared the shit out of me. The diagnosis in itself is traumatizing. When you find out that you have a mental illness, when those words sit heavy on your brain and your shoulders, everything changes. You don't walk in the world the same. You don't look at people in the eye the same. You know that you're not being looked at the same if people knew. It's the reality of living with mental illness. If you don't have mental illness and you don't believe me, I hope this is eye-opening, because it's true. It changes everything. And that is traumatic too. And then people choose, do I keep it a secret or do I let people know? You're taking a risk either way. Letting people know, you're risking judgment. You're risking losing friends. You're risking fear. Keeping it to yourself, you're risking depression. You're risking shame. You're risking grief that lasts a lot longer than it should. When you have OCD, the diagnostic criteria is that you have insight into what you're thinking isn't real. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't align with your character, right? That insight works against us. When we have violent, sexual, blasphemous, intrusive thoughts, it works against us. Why? Because we're sitting there going, I have these horrible thoughts. I know this isn't what I want. I know that this isn't who I am, but I can't stop. And so then you just think, but I have this insight that I'm not, but there must be some truth. I've got to keep searching. I've got to keep searching. And that daily trauma over and over of trying to figure out what it means, what it is, what this says about us. And as I was talking to Sean, I love him, by the way, Sean Chinook, he was just saying, if your brain is telling you something over and over, I must be this monster, I must be this person, these thoughts must be real, the impact that takes on your self-esteem. If you can sit here and say that for 12 years, if you thought about that maybe you're a monster for having these thoughts, and then the diagnosis makes that go away, then you're a better person than I am and anybody else, because that is not true. The insight makes it almost worse. It's a saving grace, but it's a double-edged sword. When I was treated successfully and diagnosed, I was angry. Why did this happen to me? Why doesn't anybody else have to go through all of this? What did I do to deserve this? What kind of person am I that I was unable to recognize that this was not coming from me, it was coming from an illness? Well, you don't know until you know. It feels so real. And for those of you, if you're listening and you don't have OCD, what I mean is OCD and thoughts, intrusive thoughts, can manifest physically. If you Matt Miles gives this great example. If I were to tell you, I want you to sit and think about biting into a lemon right now, I want you to think about it. Like really go through the motions and think about it over and over and over. Chances are, like as soon as you bite into that imaginary lemon, your mouth's going to start watering. You might like go, because your brain can manifest these things happening in your body. So when you have an OCD intrusive thought and you're thinking about it 24/7. So if you were thinking about a lemon 24/7, your mouth would water 24/7. You would have a squunched up face 24/7. That's a reality. And that's what we deal with. Whatever thoughts that we have starts manifesting in other areas in our body, and it's terrifying. So we always can't tell whether it's truth. By the way, if you hear something snoring, that would be my French bulldog over there who is just snoring away. He's been doing it all day. Anyway, so when you go through something like this, and then all of a sudden it's, okay, I have an illness, I'm cured now, or not cured because you're never cured, but I can manage this now. And I just have to let all that stuff go. Oh, wait, why isn't it leaving? Wait, why can't I let it go? Why do I feel sad? Why do I still feel angry? Why am I still envious of other people who never had to go through this? Why do I feel like I'm behind in life? Why do I feel like I'm damaged goods? That's the self-esteem part that you can't just shake off. And here's the worst part. OCD people, you know that I'm correct when I say this. We are black and white people. It's either this way or it's that way. If we're feeling horrible, we'll never feel good again. If we're feeling good, it's never going to be bad again. That's what keeps us trapped in the cycle. So when we think about having to go through these major, major emotions, grieving what we went through, feeling sad and angry, we think, oh, we can't go there. No, I don't want to be sad because if I'm sad, that means I'll never be happy again. And I did this for years and years and years. I would stave off the anger. I staved off the sadness. I staved off all of those bad emotions. I'll go over it. I'll go under it. I'll go around it. But I can't handle the grief. And you won't move on until you go through it. That's where you have to sit in the gray. The reality is, you are not a bad person because you have intrusive thoughts. This is part of having OCD. This is the criteria of having OCD. It's hard not to think it's a reflection of who you are. But before symptoms, during diagnosis, after treatment, before treatment, you're still the same person. None of this gets lost in these stupid, idiotic thoughts that we can't stop and we hate. You don't get lost. You're the same person that you were. That never left. So if you think to yourself, people are going to see me differently? Or what if people knew what kind of thoughts that I had? What if they judged me? You know what? They might. They might. People can't really get OCD unless they have it. They could try, but it's hard to get until you experience it. Those aren't your people if they don't want to get it, and if they don't want to love you or like you or accept you anyway. Those aren't your people, because there are plenty of us out there that get it. And you don't have to feel like you have changed who you are because of this horrible experience. That's like the silver lining I always try to talk about. It's hard to talk about silver linings with OCD, and I'm not an optimistic person. Y'all know this. I'm a realist. But the silver lining is, once you grieve, once I decided to go through the grief, I took the risk and live with the uncertainty. What you have to do in ERP, I went through the grief. I felt the anger. I felt the sadness. I felt the jealousy and the envy for everybody else in the world that didn't have to go through this, that was ahead of my time or ahead of me, had these wonderful lives, which we all know isn't true, but it sure does feel like it, right? It wasn't until I went through it that I could feel like I found me again. I found that authentic Chrissy who is the same person deep down as I was when I'm 8 years old. Like that character, that humor, that everything about me that had gotten lost in the symptoms, lost in the diagnosis, lost in my pitiful, pathetic self-esteem. I often say this. I hate the word victim. I hate it. And especially if we have OCD, we're like, no, I'm not a victim of this. I want to either be this or that. But it wasn't until I said, oh yeah, I was a victim. I was a victim of this horrible illness that hijacked my brain. I didn't ask for it. I didn't want it. Why me? Everything else. It wasn't until I saw that and was okay with it that I was able to heal. And that truly, it's a long stage for some people. We do want to just move on, and we want to be the person we should have been or could have been. The reality is, you are a person with OCD. But that doesn't mean that you're a bad person. OCD does not define you. You do not define OCD. And just like ERP therapy, and you have to go through it and feel it to believe it. So I'm here telling you today, kind of giving you permission, because I had to be given permission by my own peers. You have permission to grieve this for yourself, to be sad, to be angry, to do what you need to do, to think, why me? To think, what did I do wrong? To feel like I have a horrible self-esteem. I'm saying all this because I've felt it and still feel it at times. You have permission to feel that way. And that doesn't say anything about who you are. If anything, once you feel it, it will make you stronger. And you're hearing this from someone who went through that phase for 13 years. Came out on the other side, not feeling so, clean and built up, but I'm still a work in progress. And aren't we all a work in progress? Those of us that live with OCD? Thank you for being here. I hope this resonated, because I think this is a big topic. There were two huge phases for me in recovery: the symptom management and the grieving. So if that's where you are right now, you're not alone. I promise you that. Have a lovely weekend, and I will see you next time.